Highly melanated.
A lot goes through a cop's mind when they pull someone over, especially if they have to get into a pissing contest with the driver about why they stopped them. It sets off an alarm. The officer thinks, are they hiding something? Is the car stolen? Now, if there's a girl in the passenger seat like you, does she look all right? Has she been beaten or raped? If they start talking to each other and not the officer, we figure they might be trying to distract. What are they hiding in the car? Drugs, a weapon? Now, if the driver starts to insult the officer, we try to verbally get control of the situation. But if they still don't comply, then we have to use force.
But you still don't know if they did anything wrong.
That's why we searched them, to make sure that they don't have a weapon. We run their license and instruct them not to move. But if they open the door or reach through an open window, they're probably going for a weapon. So if I think I see a gun, I don't hesitate. I shoot.
You shoot? Because you think you see a gun? You don't say something first? Like, put your hands up?
It depends. Is it night? Can I see? Am I on duty alone?
What if you were in a white neighborhood and it was a white man wearing a suit, driving a Mercedes? He could be a drug dealer, right?
He could.
So if you saw him reach into the window and you thought that you saw a gun, would you shoot him? Or would you say put your hands up?
I say put your hands up.
Do you hear what you just said?
We live in a complicated world, Star.
No, it doesn't seem that complicated to me.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Highly Melanated.
Dripping with melanation from all over the planet. Melanation all over the planet.
Melanation elevation.
I tell you what,
Earth
I'm dripping with
melanation.
something right now because it's hot.
It's called melanation, what you dripping with, girl.
It's hot.
PJ, it's so hot. I actually have to shave my armpits.
I'm glad it's hot. That's why I'm lurking in the grass, baby.
Red. I'm always hot, and this ain't new to this. I'm not new to this. I'm true to this.
Oh.
And Blair, I don't know how I'm going to survive the rest of the summer.
And also on the Zoom call, we are joined with
Ron.
Ron, I love it.
Yes, we are joined. We are joined on the call with retired NYPD police officer Ron.
Hey.
Ron, who is so nothing, just nothing about being.
How do you feel about the heat?
Yeah, how do you feel about the
relaxed.
heat?
He too cool.
How do I feel about the heat? Well, it's a little too hot to take out the motorcycle, but as soon as it calms down a little bit, I'm out
Here.
Okay.
My heart just jumped out of my chest.
I'll be out there.
Okay.
It came out of my chest,
Breeze.
yes.
Okay, and
Breeze,
the gang is
yes.
back for another episode of Highly Melanated, where we melanate your palate and feed your soul. Oh, y'all been so greedy.
Oh my.
As always, you can follow us on every form of social media. That is Highly Melanated Podcast on Instagram. There is H_Melanated Pod on Twitter. And you can also go to our website, which is www.highlymelanatedpodcast.com. In addition, you can email us if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. anything that you want to get off your chest. If you want us to read a comment or a feeling that you have based on anything that you have on your mind, whatever, email us at highlymelanatedpodcast@gmail.com.
Oh yeah.
And on that note, I want to once again welcome everybody to the Highly Melanated Manor, where we melanate your palate and feed your soul. I am Jeeves once again, and I am here to go around and take your initial orders. What we'd like to do here on the show is go around the room, see if there's any toast, any shout outs, and special drinks that you would like as an individual. Because we have a special guest today, Mr. Ron from NYPD, retired police officer. Is there a special drink, and is there a particular shout out that you would like to give?
Well, let's see. A special drink. I'm going to make it a potent one. I'm going to take a vodka martini dirty.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, all right.
Giggity, giggity.
Shivery timbers.
Giggity good.
Yeah, that's it.
Of course, sir.
And if I had to give a shout out, I have to go. I'm going to go way back. I'm going to go way back. I'm going to give a shout out to my great grandfather, who pointed me in the right direction and told me a lot of things that went on in the past, and opened my eyes from being a young kid. So here's to him.
Amazing.
Well,
I feel like we're going to have to touch on that during our conversation.
I feel like I want to touch on it right now.
Shout out to great granddad, because for him, if it wasn't for him, it wouldn't be for him, and I wouldn't be here for me.
Because
This is true.
Because I also did want to point out that our special guest is the pops of Red over here, and just the simple fact of would love to hear at least one thing, so that your toast goes out to, because that means there are 3 generations of y'all on here, and that wisdom is already it's already right now here. So share, please.
Well, let's see. Well, my great grandfather, he was a sharecropper, and which, a lot of people can't even imagine, being forced to live on the back of a field in a shack in the middle of the woods and live off of scraps that somebody threw to you. But, he used to tell me, he says, growing up in Virginia, he said, listen, he said, when you walk down the street as a young man, he says, you could not make eye contact with white people. He says, Lord help you if you make eye contact with a white woman. He says, you got a beating that you would never forget. If you that would be lucky. Right. Well, you would be lucky if you got the beating. It could be worse.
Yeah.
But one thing he says, no matter what happens, no matter how hard they give it to you, he says, always get up. He says, get up off your knees, he says, and take it to him. He says, he says, no matter what. And that's what I live by. And it's like, you know what, no matter, it doesn't have to be a racial thing, but no matter how bad things get, I'm getting back up. I'm coming. I'll be right back. It's just like the commercial. I'll be right back.
Hey, Ron, can I ask where in Virginia?
He was in Roanoke and Richmond. And I remember when it was Roanoke back then when I was a kid, it was country. There was nothing. There was nothing at all. Cornfields and tobacco.
Yeah. My family's from Winchester. That's why I asked. I was born in Winchester.
Richmond, yeah. My mother is from Richmond, Chesapeake area.
Yeah. They was in a place. Actually, my mother is in a little town in Virginia that no one even have heard of. Sax, Virginia. A lot of people don't even know about it.
Yeah, I've heard of it because I'm from Virginia.
Yeah, little tiny town.
Wow.
Okay.
Are we cousins?
Yes.
We
are.
Probably.
All essentially.
We all cousins, essentially. We all family,
right.
Number one.
Right. Well, my family's last name down there is Freeman. So take that.
You're going to give
Freeman.
government.
All right now.
Okay, you're going to give. Oh, Freeman. Okay, you get that. I'm like, don't be giving your government now.
But one thing that we would like for you to give us is your highly melanated sense. As you guys know, these are the things that we see throughout the week that are full of melanation, the things that we touch, hear, taste, smell, and see. All right, that's all of them? Yeah, I did it in a different order, but that's all of them. So is there anything that you would like to kind of draw our attention to that just hits one of those senses for you?
Well, you know what? I would say with everything that's going on with the climate, with everything that's been going on with the unfortunate killings of George Floyd and everything, it has actually changed the what would you call it, your quality of life in the neighborhood, in certain neighborhoods. And people say, well, I don't understand it. This is because of what happened. And a lot of the cops don't want to get involved now. They just don't. A lot of these cops just want to they want to do their 8.5 hours, and they want to go home in one piece. They're not looking for trouble. And now you've got things happening like, I don't know about your neighborhood around the weeks leading up to the 4th. It sounded like Vietnam in my neighborhood. It was a war zone. Cops weren't coming. They're not getting involved. So it's kind of thing is, we protest because we have a real issue for the things that have been going on. But on the other hand, on the flip side, you got a lot of guys, men and women, are just like, you know what? I'm not looking for trouble. I'm not even responding to these calls. They'll, of course, I mean, you know, major calls, you know, like burglaries and break-ins, real felonious crimes, they're showing up. But for those other little things, someone broke your car window, someone ran through your yard, you know, fireworks until 6 a.m. That was my neighborhood.
Damn it!
Fireworks.
I say that I was because I was like,
they were not coming. It just, you know, it's everybody. No, it's just they don't want to be bothered. You know, they just want to, like so many people, they want to do their 20 years or whatever they have left and go home. And it's just gotten to the point where it's like, it's a self-perpetuating issue. You protest, and rightfully so, but you know, when it comes to them responding, for the littlest thing, I saw a car accident, a minor fender bender, and the two people were arguing, and the police show up, and they're just taking a report, but the people now running out with the cameras and everything, and the cops are like, it's just an accident, and they're making it into something else. Then the water bottles start being thrown. I'm like, oh, why are you doing this? You're turning it into it's an accident. It's an accident. Let these people go home. Let them go home. Don't turn it into something it's not. But you know, you have people, unfortunately, who are agitators. You know, and I'd say a lot of it's from frustration. You know, but you know, you have to step up. I think that people have to step up. If you see someone doing something wrong, you know, if you see somebody throwing bottles at the cops or EMTs or firemen, I've seen them doing that. I'm like, why would you do that? You're gonna need these services. You want it to the point where the sanitation don't show up because they're afraid you're gonna throw bottles at them. It gets a little crazy. I mean, I remember the 70s. I know what it was like, you know, when you had the riots in Brooklyn and everything, and then your services got progressively worse because they're not coming. Take South Jamaica, for instance. And a lot of people don't remember South Jamaica. South Jamaica basically burned to the ground. They just burned houses like it was crazy. The fire department wasn't coming. They were not coming.
You know, I was always curious about that. No, and it's so fun. It's going to just bleed into our meal as usual. But my family's from Brooklyn, and my uncle was part of the riots that was here in some high school at Madison High School. And I understand that you guys are from Queens, and I've never known anything about anybody's like what life was like in Queens during this time. So I'm always curious about that. Like my father's mother lived in Queens, but we only went over there, you know, during holidays because that's the relationship that he had with his mom.
Well, I remember Martin Van Buren High School. That's in Queens. Martin Van Buren at one point was, I'm going to say, 90% white. And, the black children teenagers started coming into the school. And it was like all of a sudden it's a major problem. And it was crazy. And, and you can see the disparity in the type of lives that we live. On one side of the street, the north side of the street where the school was, you had the black kids, waiting at the bus stop to go home, to get on the buses, the specials and all that. Across the street on the south side, all the white guys and young women had cars. All the kids had cars, and they drove home. We stood, and I didn't go to that school, but I used to go up there, and you see them. It was just so weird, and every now and then they'd start hurling bottles across the street, and get your asses out of here. It was not easy.
And you know what? That just adds to the conversation of generational wealth, just about the privilege that they've had for so long, where we've had to build ourselves up from our bootstraps and everything like that. But I think I'm gonna go off on a different tangent here. So I'm hungry. We're hungry.
I hope so, because we're going to kick it off. Being that most of us on this line have Virginia roots, I think I'm going to chef up a meal today that is considered the Virginia flag. And that is some good old Virginia ham with some green beans and potatoes. We're going to serve that for the meal, and we're going to get on to continue to speak with you, Ron. What you were actually saying and where you were going, would like to continue with it. But before we go a little too far, can you just start with telling us about how long you were on the force? What was your main responsibilities? What was the average day like? And then we'd like to, go from there. If you can just tell us about that.
All right. 20 years. 20 years there.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
You're welcome. 20 years of service. I worked, actually, when I first started, I worked in the subway, in transit.
My uncle was a transit cop. My uncle's a transit cop for Brooklyn.
Really?
He's a retired transit cop.
Might know each other. We'll have to talk.
You probably do actually know him, because my uncle was pretty popular. So.
Okay. I started transit, and then the hostile takeover came, and so I went into PD, and then I worked in a lot of different places. I mean, Christopher, he would tell you that every time you look, I was doing something else. But,
yeah, you're just a little busybody. I mean,
little bit. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I worked. I worked undercover for a while. Did that.
Ooh, New York Undercover. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have a bar to go to, and then there was somebody singing like Mary J. Blige and stuff like that? You have a Hispanic partner?
No, it was nothing as good as that. But I mean, I guess later on I can tell you a couple of horror stories with that. I got injured from fellow officers, but I can save that for later on if you want to know about it.
All right, so I'm just taking my note. Injury from.
What made you want to? Because you said you started off law enforcement with the MTA. What made you want to go into that area?
Believe it or not, what we would say was the craziest cliche. You wanted to make a difference. That was it. I got tired. When I was a kid, I was growing up, I watched almost every single young black man in my neighborhood get arrested. Every single one. For nonsense, for stupidity. And I was like, I used to say, there's got to be more to life than that. There's got to be. And you don't wear jail as a badge of honor. I don't get it. He's like, and that's the way it was where I was growing up. Everyone was like, oh, you never been in there. You don't, not going in there. But, I remember in my old neighborhood, I was about 15 years old, and I was hanging out with my friends on the corner, just hanging out like a bunch of teenagers, and police car rolls up. Everybody takes off running except lame guy. I'm standing there on my bicycle like, uh-oh. And the cop gets out, white guy. He gets out and he walks over to me, and it was like the brick fence. He sat down next to me and he put his arm on my shoulder. He goes, listen, there's a better way. He says, these guys, he says, they're going to take you down. He says, make a difference. He says, make a difference in your life. Make a difference in your neighborhood. And that guy is what changed everything for me. It wasn't like I just was like, I need to be it. I said, because, you know, I said, somebody actually took the time to say, hey, you look like a good guy. Your head's on straight. Make a difference. But, you know, I was only 15, so I couldn't do anything at that time. But, you know, I wanted to make a difference. And, yeah, took a lot of flack from my friends and one of my brothers at the time. You know, and I was like, so why would you want to do that? I says, why wouldn't you want to help someone? It's not all about it. You don't lock people up every day. You don't, you know, it's not like that. Most of the time, your job is mundane, quiet stuff. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. You know, calls for service, changing tires. We're not even supposed to do that. I've changed more tires for people stuck on the road than anyone. I've done that. People stuck. They're like, well, let's get you out of here, get you going. But you know, that's basically it. To make a difference, that was it. You know, if I could make one person's day, I did good for me.
Do you feel like you've made a difference?
I think so, because you know what? I think there's little kids that back then that I dealt with, that I interacted with, that will remember me. Like I remember that guy that spoke to me. You know, I mean, I used to walk around and I always used to carry lollipops. I'm sorry, I used to carry lollipops, and I wouldn't just give lollipops. You know, have their mother like beat me up or something. What are you doing? You know, so I'd see the kid and I'd be like, hey, I mean, how you doing? I'd give the kid a high five, and they'd be, you know, if we was in a patrol car, you know, let them play with the buttons, turn on the lights and all that stuff. Give him a lollipop. Kid was like, oh my God, best day of my life. And, you know,
sometimes it's the little things.
It's the little things that make a difference. You know, I tell you real quick, I remember pulling over somebody once. Tail light was out. And I pulled him over. The guy turns, hey, what are you bothering me? I said, listen, I'm just letting you know your tail light's out. You give me a ticket? I said, no, tail light's out. I said, I'm letting you know because the next person that stops you is probably not going to let you go. I'm just letting you know. Go over to Strauss, get yourself a light bulb, have a good night. And that was it. You know, the guys was like, oh man.
All right. So you just like, okay, so you opened the can of worms up just now, just in my mind. First question I have in my mind, because this is a theory that so many of us who have experience with police officers, at the end of the month, when it's time to give tickets out, is there really a quota that folks have, that the officers have to meet?
Oh, no, I can actually give you a little insight into that. Okay. Yes. Every command, every precinct has what they say is your activity. Okay. So average activity. So we're talking about just summonses now. Just summonses. So if everybody in that precinct averages 15 summonses in a month, then at the end of the month, they would say, you should have 15. So now where this would come into play would be, all right, I want a day off. It's my son's birthday. I want to get the day off. And they would pull this nonsense. How's your activity? I mean, like, what does that have to do with, well, everyone else has this? I'm like, and I tell you, unfortunately, for the first 5 years of that young man's life, I didn't get those days off. Didn't get to go to his birthday. Didn't do it because I said I refuse to screw people to have time off. I'm not doing it. Not happening. I said, they said, oh, but you didn't, you don't have X amount. Well, that's what it is. It's not a quota. But the thing is, if that's the average, then by the end of that month, like if you're out there driving on the highway and it's the 28th, 29th of the month, stick with your speed limit because people are going to be out there. They're going to be out there. End of the month, they're going to be out there. I know. I get pulled over. I know what's going to happen. So, you know, it's not a quota because they'll never say that. They'll never say it's a quota because it's you really can't impose that. But the thing is, because they'll never put it in writing. So now it's you know, it's pretty much not like it was back then. A lot of stuff has changed in all these years. A lot, you know, for the good. A lot has changed.
Yeah, you know, and it's funny you say that because, and I'll speak on behalf of Red and I because we're the ones who were raised here. The New York City public, like the police cars, at least the transit cops, from what I can speak really closely with, everything was just very different on the subway. Anyway, the MTA was completely different way back then. You know, we still had the what angels was it? What angels? The guardian angels.
Guardian angels, yeah.
Yeah, which was, you know, another form of the Black Panther Party, and it was just a different experience then. Now, let me ask you: as long as you've been retired, which is how many years now?
Almost 16, 17 years, something like that.
Oh, good for you.
Oh, praise you got out of there.
Enjoy your retirement.
Yeah, he's been at it
And I
for a while.
bet you are. Oh.
What has been the biggest difference that you've seen so far from the communities that you used to enforce law in versus the communities and how they are now?
Well, I would say it's a twofold thing because it's not just the community. Because so I'll say I'll say one feeds off the other. I find the kids, the younger kids, the teenagers, everything, are extremely disrespectful. Now, and that's not just to cops. They're disrespectful to other people, to their neighbors. But on what feeds on that is the cops don't really get into community policing. They don't talk to people. I remember, I don't know if my son remembers, we was outside one day, this is years ago, in front of the house, you know, old lonely neighborhood here. And two cops came walking down the street. They just came walking through. And it was like, and you know, they just stopped and they said, hey, what's going on? Everything cool? Everything's, yeah. And they just walked on about their business. I was like, interaction. You have to build trust. I mean, you can't go around saying that every single person's a drug dealer or a thief or something like that. They're not. They're hardworking people. Just like I hear people saying, "Oh, everyone that lives in the projects, they're all living up here on welfare." I said, no, they're not. You need to be out here in the morning and watch who goes to work. There's people that work here. They live here because this is what they can afford. I says, not everybody can go out and buy a $700,000 house. So I said, you know,
where do I have those at?
$700,000 house?
All over.
Where are those in New York?
Oh, in New York? No, in Jersey.
Exactly.
I'll be upstate.
Maybe Queens.
One of the things that you just mentioned, which I think is just so important when it comes to the relationship between the community and the police force, is the level of trust that is reciprocal. And I think that that's one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now, is that there is no trust from the community in the police force. And a lot of that is because of the way we've seen the justice system play out, and the way that we've seen, you know, certain individuals unfairly targeted. And you kind of spoke about this a little bit before when you said you got some flack from, you know, friends who, you know, gave you a hard time about wanting to become and then actually becoming a police officer. But I think one of the biggest issues is that we in the community are so hesitant to put our trust in agents of law enforcement that we see as not helping us or is actually actively hurting us. So what would you say to people who feel that way?
Yeah, and you know what? And it's for something like that, I would say it's almost like with politics. If people don't like the system, they don't like how it's being run, get involved, get in the system. Don't you can't wait for them to change. You got to get into it. You have to become part of it. You know, some people say, well, I don't want to be a cop. Well, you got to do something. You can't always expect others to police you. You have to be able to police yourself. You have to get in there.
Be able to be on a community board or something.
Right.
There's something that so many. I mean, one of our biggest things that we've drilled into time at the time, and we even said this on one of our own like personal meetings about how we drilled like the importance of what it means for people to get involved in their communities. And it's so important that you take ownership for something and not wait for someone else to do something for you. So I'm just
right. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, maybe it's a bad analogy, but it's kind of like when people will. I'm speaking from my own personal experience in the neighborhood. People rent properties around here. They don't take care of it. Grass growing up to the windows. Got 3 pit bulls running around in the house. That place looked terrible because they don't own it. When you own something and you start paying that $2,200 a month mortgage
plus
all
HOA,
sudden, right? All of a sudden, or I like it was better is when I see these kids, and it's Chris and attest to this, they'd be out there all over the cars, and I'd be like, get off my car, get off my car, get off my car. And now they're grown and they got their little Audis and stuff. And you go and even lean on that car, fight time. They just want to, I'll get out. Oh, now it's a whole different world. That's because you're paying for it.
Exactly.
Ownership, and ownership just doesn't mean property. Ownership means everything else too. Own what's yours.
I want to backtrack just a bit to what you were saying before about what we can do in our communities and about joining in to be able to make a change. So from your perspective, how does joining the force make a change within like the Black community? Especially like, and maybe you can shed some more light in this, especially when you're like under specific orders. Like we've seen in the past that videos are coming to light where they're shown that police, oh my, it's escaping my brain. The headman in charge of the police station, who's that again? The captain, no, not the captain. The captain is saying specifically target Black and Latinos, and those are quote unquote orders, and they may go against your conscience. How do you make a change when you're up against stuff like that, or when you genuinely want to join? Because from what I'm hearing from you is that you are a genuine person that wanted to make a change within your community based on being inspired by a conversation that you had when you were 15. So how does that look from your perspective?
Well, I mean, honestly, okay, yeah, I know that people do get targeted. And thank goodness in all of the years, I've never been in that situation where they had told you target a particular group. And the thing is that just you being there, and if someone implies that to someone, and now you got to say you have an officer, a partner, and he or she wants to do that, they're going to look at you and they're going to be like, I'm not doing that, because they know you don't have to say anything. They know that you're probably, if something like that starts going down, you're going to report it to internal affairs. It's going to get reported. Somebody's going to have a problem. But now, like the unfortunate thing with Mr. Floyd, you had the senior officer there, the guy and these other guys were relatively new from my understanding. I think one of them only had 4 days on patrol. He was new. So it's like, and I'm not by no means saying it's right, but you're standing there and you're going, I can almost feel it. How powerful it was, like to stand there and be like, is this the right thing? Is it now? They didn't know what to do. They froze. They shouldn't have froze. that's just common sense. Look at what you're doing to this guy. Look at what you're doing. I mean, something should have been done. If outsiders can see what's happening, certainly the guys that are standing there should have been able to like, hey, that's enough. And the rule of thumb that all of the people that I've ever worked with, cuffs on, fight's done. That's it. Cuffs on, fight's done.
So
we all have questions.
Tied into it
because I sort of my question is go
ahead.
Because what you just described reminded me of something I was watching on CNN not too long ago, which was the officer Carriole Home, who was fired for stepping in while her white colleague put her suspect in a chokehold. And she spoke up and saying, like, you know, you're doing too much, instead of like how the cops did that to George Floyd. They just stood back. And then now their situation, you know, is what's presently happening now as far as them being convicted. We're praying. Right. But she lost her job just for speaking up. So it's like, what do you do in those situations? Exactly what you were just saying. If you know something is like going too far and far beyond. And for those who are asking, like, who want to know what I'm talking about, it's just a quick old Google. We like to give information here, but we know. You can Google Carriole, Cariol, Horn, Horne. She's a black female police officer who was fired almost 20 years ago, and lost everything. Lost her pension, lost her, everything, just because she stood up.
How many years? How long has she been on the force when that had happened? Because I can see where something like that, you step in, you're on probation, and they'll blast you right out of the force. They'll do that. It's a retaliation. They'll do that. It's not right. But that's what I'm saying. If she had been tenured, that wouldn't have happened. And I'd be willing to see. And then also, if she's had anything previous, I mean, I don't mean like, I'm saying maybe infractions within the department, and they use that against her, you know, that on top of that.
It's politics. It's all politics.
Right.
And when it all comes down to it. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
But the also thing is just that, you know, it depends on what department. Was it a unionized job? You know, because you can't just fire people, you know, here in New York. It's not that easy. You can, but I mean, for doing the right thing, it's next to impossible. So, you know, I'd have to look her up and read more up on it and see. But it sounds to me like she stepped in, did the right thing, and they turned it against her and pulled the rug right out from under her.
It was basically a George Floyd situation 20 years ago that she prevented from happening. And so now, like, she came on and she lost everything, and now she's wondering, can she get her information money back? Like, all the stuff that she lost. I don't think that's what she's solely wondering, but she's speaking up on behalf of
she could probably, if she had the right attorneys, they can probably get back all of her back pay for all of those years. She won't.
If this is the case that I'm thinking of, PJ, I read about that too, and she is in the process of getting her pension reinstated.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this here speaks to why, when we're requesting police to be fired for acts that they've done on the force that are illegal, why we don't see immediate arrest. Because a lot of us have been watching the TV, we've been watching what's going on, we've been following on social media, and we are wondering, why haven't they arrested this person? Right now, there's a outcry for the police to be arrested that murdered Breonna Taylor. So what Ron is explaining is behind the scenes of why we haven't seen certain police officers arrested immediately and why it takes so long. Because I know a lot of people are probably listening and they're like, well, they should arrest them, and people are outraged, and you have every right to be, but you also have to understand the law and the politics behind it.
Right. And as terrible as it may sound, you have to do process. And they say
that's the system that we live in.
And it's funny. So I always try to, like, at the same time, as much as we, like you just said, I always try to compare, especially like television versus real life, right? And I'm not gonna bring up what I was saying earlier, but this is a good part about it. The idea I always bring up, like, the idea of the justice system, and I use air quotations for those, obviously you can't hear or see me, justice system, as the same as the healthcare system. When you watch on television to go to an emergency room, you're waiting. In real life, you're waiting. On TV, they go in, they come out, they get surgery right away. This happens, everything is within like the same week. In real life, you're waiting. You're waiting. People are waiting for arraignments. People are waiting for, people are locked up now, still haven't even seen the judge for what they've been convicted for. So it's like the justice system doesn't move in the same way that you think it should move or it does move on television.
It's funny you say that, because I've seen cases that I've been involved with where they've been, being held until their case comes. And they've been held so long, when they make it to the hearing, they go, okay, time served. You've been in there that long.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Time served. And then you got the ones where they put them in, and because the system is always so overloaded, you're still in there doing paperwork, and they've left already. They've left the building. I remember you'd be on arrest for 15 hours. 15 hours, and you're still doing paperwork. And I go, where's the guy? Oh, where they let him go. They gave him a DAT. And
well, let me ask you, as we,
real quick before we get,
I'm sorry. My bad.
Before we get too far away from it, because Red, I know you had a question too, regarding what we were talking about before, but you were talking about how, the police officers who were just kind of standing around, who you said froze during what was happening with George Floyd, and they froze, and one of them was only just a couple days on the job, so he was still pretty green. So that just makes me just want to know, from your perspective as a retired police officer, what are your thoughts on just the training that it takes to become a police officer, and then taking it a step before that, just the qualifications that people have to go through to become a police officer? Just overall, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think the thing that a majority of people in the community think is that police aren't adequately trained, and they're not screened properly to even get to the point to even become eligible to go through the training to become a police officer. So somebody who has gone through that process and has been on the force and has seen all different types of police officers, just what is your general thought on just, I'm saying screening process because I don't really know what else to call it, but like the qualifications to become a police officer, and then the training that police officers go through? Like, do you feel it's adequate? Do you see room for improvement? What would you suggest?
Well, you know what, the training and the academy and everything that they put you through, because people say all they do is give you firearms training. That's not, no, you have to have law, you have police science, you have social science, it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff to take in 6 months, and then you have to go through in-service training. You have to go to intact training. You have to go through all these things. But I would say, as far as the initial screening, you have your medical, your psychological, your agility. Psychological it's a good tool. It's very good. The psychologists and psychiatrists that they have are very good, but they don't have the manpower to, for thousands of people to keep retesting them. They need, my opinion is to, I'd say, constantly bring in people, and bring them in and test them and evaluate them. But that's not the way it works, because of manpower.
Is there a retesting process?
There's screening. Like if you got into a shooting, you got into a shootout, you have to come in. They're going to screen you, make sure you're all right, because you don't want to be PTSD out there, so they do bring you in, they evaluate you. But the thing is, that's one or two people. They need to bring people in. I would say at least annually, and I'm sure that there's people out here now listening and cussing me out saying that. But there's
Truth is the
people
truth.
out there. Yeah, there's
But
people out there who are gifted liars who know how to get around this.
They know how to get through the system. Absolutely.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
professional.
And
they know how
just so
to
you
get.
know, just like you said, I'm sure that there are people out there who, are, as we know, just in the climate of the nation that we live in, there are people who are adamantly opposed to just what you said. But just as many people are opposed to it, there are so many people that are for it too. Because you're right, like this is the type of profession where there should be constant and consistent screening, because you are responsible for dealing and interacting with people, with other humans on a
general
daily
public
basis. And to just kind of go through a process once and then not be reevaluated until something triggers
that's the part,
a
the
reevaluation,
right?
Is not sufficient. It's not enough. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. There does need to be some type of annual evaluation.
Right. I know that one of the things that happens is people become, over the years, they become very, very cynical, and they get tunnel vision. They start looking at a group of people a certain way. You say, oh yeah, that's the guy that does this, or that's the guy, and they start lumping everybody into that, and that's their thinking. And I'm like, you can't do that. You have to keep an open mind, but a lot of people are just like, no, screw this job. This job isn't what it used to be. It's this. They're taking our rights away. They're not taking your rights away. Yeah, some of you guys are taking our lives away. So what are you saying? I mean, what are you saying?
Okay.
So I'm glad that you actually brought up like this whole state of being open-minded, because as my father,
Papa.
one of the things that I've always taken from you and from mom as well, hell, even Alex, who was my sister, is constantly having a perspective of and being able to look at everything from different angles and different point of views. I think I told you maybe about a month or two ago that one of the things that me and Alex have been chastised for recently a lot was that we have a bias because we've had someone who's actually doing the right thing. And because you're doing the right thing, we view everything as everything being, through a rose-colored lens, if you will. And so people are saying that we don't see the real issue, which is not true. But I guess my question to you is, how do you have those conversations with people who only see it from one perspective or one point of view? I mean, I've heard people and I've seen comments when this whole thing for George Floyd had gone down that said, well, he shouldn't have been there, and he did, he was a criminal, so he kind of got what he deserved. Like, how do you start changing the rhetoric? Because it's not just, I know that it's not just, just police, it's not just community, it's actually the combination of the two.
Well, I've actually had that conversation with a friend of mine, and he's like, oh, all this nonsense, and it's over a criminal, a petty criminal. And I just looked, did he deserve the death penalty? And it was like, well, I said, no, well, I says, let's take it a little, let's look at it the other way. I said, now, you know me. I said, so let's say I'm coming out of a store, something like that happens. Now this guy is on top of me, and he's got his knee on my neck, and I go out of the picture. I'm dead because of it. Well, now what? And he's like, well, I know you. I says, so not knowing someone makes it okay? I says, I don't get it. I mean, isn't a life a life? You can't change some of these people's minds at all. I don't even try to talk to them. When they start in on it, they just like, oh, well, Black Lives Matter is just this and this. I says, you're going off on the wrong. I says, look at the bigger picture. Look at how we're treated. And they said, the first thing they tell you is, well, all lives matter. I says, and I was telling, I think I told this to Chris. I says, you say black, I say black lives matter. He says, no, all lives matter. I says, okay. I said, so look at it this way. All houses matter. I says, all the houses on your block matter. Big, beautiful houses, landscape, lawns, all of them matter. I says, but this house is on fire. I says, okay, this house needs help. All these houses matter, but this one's burning. So does this one need help? And he said, well, yeah, okay, well, I understand. And I says, yeah, well, it's the same thing with people. We matter, but I says, if we're getting beat up constantly, pulled over, stopped, treated like common criminals, we matter. Mm-hmm. I said, you don't get it. I said, you don't walk in my shoes. You don't get pulled over. I said, you don't get followed around in Rite Aid. You don't get, I go in the supermarket and I got he knows the guy in the supermarket with the stupid cigar following you. What am I going to steal? What am I going to steal? A chicken?
Like, I come here all the time. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I see you all the time. You see all the time. And the guy in Rite Aid.
Yeah, so this actually goes back to the point that you had said earlier, and it just like it pinged in my head, like the community policing. Like, it's important to, I think, from my perspective, and I mean, you've already obviously, I think, agree with this point, but there's like you shouldn't be able to come in out of nowhere and police an area of people you don't even know who are in this community. But then from another perspective, I always have this other question that is always in my mind, and I'm curious on what your idea is. And this is when, let's say that there's a person that's being detained, and I use this air quotations, detained. And this, I don't know if this is part of the training that I would love to know, and most of us probably would love to know. When backup is immediately called and they come, is it standard training that no matter what the situation is, that they just jump on immediately and go in with whatever the force is, regardless of whether the situation was right or wrong?
No, because that's when you have no communications. When you have no communications, and you don't. I mean, if you say, "Look, this guy's," I'm just talking. But a lot of times, people show up, and you've got your cowboys. You got your cowboys that show up and be like, "I'm gonna show them," and they just want to grab people and muscle. I mean, there was an incident just the other day that I was watching, where they detained a guy. I think it was in Texas. I don't remember for sure. They stopped the guy, black guy, and he was talking to him. And the guy was like, "Look, I didn't do nothing. I was here at Western Union."
Right.
Blah,
right,
blah,
yes.
blah. And this other cop came up and
out of nowhere
body slammed him, broke his wrist. And he says, and the other cop going, "The guy we're looking for is over there. You just broke this guy's wrist."
He's like, "How do you know? Where's his ID? Let me see his ID."
And so so that happens so often, and it just usually, whenever it sometimes, especially like what media presents versus what really happens versus what really does happen. What really does happen, I've seen it firsthand. Wait, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. What happens is there's just two things you gotta keep in mind. Adrenaline plays a big factor. Like if you got a guy pulls over, let's say officers pull over a guy or stop a guy, whoever it is, and they're talking. And whoever the officer is says, if you say casually into the mic, "Hey, listen, send me an additional unit, no emergency." And that's that. But now what happens is you stop someone and you do get mobbed right away. I mean, you see it happen. I mean, you have to be honest. We see it now, but that's because we're trying to protect what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Who's
the we? Who's the we?
Us, black folks.
Okay.
We'll come out. We'll. I mean, what we'll do now, what's been happening is people get out there with as many cameras as they can because they want to say, we're going to document this to make sure nothing goes wrong. But when you're just two cops, or even sometimes one cop, all of a sudden to be surrounded, by several people. And it's, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation of having angry people throwing things at you suddenly. Things start going off, and you gotta make a decision. It's fight or flight. You're not gonna fight all these people. You're not gonna win. You're gonna get killed.
So do you think
that goes back to what you were saying before, like the example that you gave about the car accident, and everybody, was whipping out their cameras and and that's essentially kind of like what has been born from all this, fact that like we do take it upon ourselves that we do have to document
the domino effect,
because it's the only chance that we feel we have that some type of right will happen in the situation. Because I feel that, like, I agree with you, like the situation should not be escalated by the viewing public, in the sense of like they shouldn't be throwing like things like at the police or throwing things in.
There still needs to be some respect value.
I agree what you're saying. There's the respect, but you know what I would do? I've been in a situation, because I was down for the Crown Heights riots and all that years ago. And when something would happen, I would enlist people right away. I would, they started breaking up a car and I just grab people. Hey, I need you stop the traffic over here so nobody gets hurt. And you just empowered these people. Hey, I'm gonna do something. I need you over here. I need you to help out with this. I need you to direct the ambulance here.
Being proactive.
So I'm bringing people into the situation instead of be like, stay out, get away.
Because that's what they do, stand back. They always do this get back thing with the batons. Yeah.
Right.
So that ends up being the issue. And then
it's part of community
the issue
police.
that like comes from that is, people don't want to. There's like the word comply, like is floating around so much,
like also, like a lack of respect, right? Because I saw a video today where a guy did something wrong. Apparently, this is why the police were there, and they had him on the ground. They were pinning him down, and what did they do? They were getting involved, which was good, but then they got in the police officer's face with the phones. So now you're in personal space. And like there's something heightened going on.
Well, that happens because a lot of times, a lot of white police officers and some black police officers as well are very aggressive. They come in with the mentality that they're ready to shoot to kill. And even if a person is being compliant, a lot of times they're still attacking, they're still tasing, they're still shooting. And we've seen this in many cases. I mean, as far back as like Rodney King, when the riots broke out with that in LA. So people are traumatized is the best word that I can say. People are traumatized when it comes to seeing police. Like, for example, when I'm driving, the moment I see a police officer behind me, because I constantly watch my rear view mirrors and my side view mirrors. The moment I see a police officer behind me, I can't lie. My heart falls into my stomach and I start to palpitate. And I be like, okay, I know I'm legal. I know I'm good. You should have turned down the music. That way there's no boom, 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 boom. Because, black people, we like loud music. And it's just it's innately in me that I react that way because I'm traumatized. You know what I mean? Right. So like what happens, a lot of us are traumatized. So what happens is we begin to look at every situation the same when every situation is not the same.
But you say that, but for me, it's the same thing. And it shouldn't be that way. I drive down the street, and I'm driving, and all of a sudden, I see them. And I know it. And they make that U-turn, lights come on. I'm like, I'll go along with it. I'm like, okay, I'll pull over. I have to. What's the problem? License and registration. What? I don't go through that nonsense. I'm going to leave the window this far down, whisper through the thing. I don't have time for that.
But I think that's also. I think that's like I think that's creating the conflict before the conflict even happens.
Right. This is
part of it.
This is why I tell people the time. I'll say 8 out of 10 times you dictate the outcome. If you get pulled over, people say, well, I don't feel like complying. Okay, well then roll the dice and see where that goes. I'm not going down that road because I have a responsibility for my family. I don't feel like, first of all, I don't want to be taken out of the car and then all of a sudden they find my weapon and I'm shot full of holes, and then they find my ID and go, oh shit, he was a cop.
But
So,
you know, I have to say
question,
about
though.
that. I'm sorry. Let me just say this right quick. But I have to say specifically about what you just said. So a person, a lot of times, even if they are being compliant, even if they do roll down the windows, even if they put their hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, and they're like, officer, I'm going to reach in the glove compartment because my license and registration is in there, or my registration and insurance is in there. By the time they're being compliant, a lot of these police officers, they get like, as we saw with Philando Castile.
Yeah.
He got shot in front of his, in front of his girl and his baby, and the man was compliant the whole time, but the man shot him for what reason we still can't figure out.
You know what? I tell you, I've gotten pulled over, upstate driving. State trooper.
Oh, I know about that one.
So you know how the big old cowboy hat, and the guy pulls me over.
Extra long.
The guy's like, yeah, and he's like, license and registration. And I said, what was the problem? He said, I was going speeding. Okay, got it. I says, I'm a retired police officer. I says, I have my weapon. I says, how about this? Rather than me reach anywhere, I says, I'm going to stick my hands out the window. Put cuffs on me. Go ahead, put them on. Put them on. I said, this way you don't feel threatened. And he was like, no, we'll figure this out. I said, I'm not doing nothing, man. I says, because I just told you. I says, so you're going to have to figure something out.
Well, and I think that in essence is the issue, is the fact that we have to take that responsibility for ourselves.
Right, exactly.
And protect ourselves against the people that are supposed to protect us. And I think that's where a lot of the anger comes from, and that's where a lot of the frustration comes from, and the sense of non-compliance. And so...
And it's a shame that you as an officer, as a former retired officer, have to go through that, but it's because you're Black. You know what I mean? And it's a shame.
And and this just goes back to one of the original points that I love, that is so important when it comes to policing itself, is, as we discussed about before, like the evaluations needed, like as far as your mental health and everything, as well as just the training, because I recently, and I'm not going to do what I was originally planning on doing, but I recently watched this movie called The Hate You Give. I don't know. Did you see it by any chance?
I saw some of it. I do know of it.
Okay, so there was a part where Common was explaining to the daughter about what goes through the mind of a police officer when he pulls someone over. And I found it really interesting because there are so many different things that go through a person's mind, but at the same time, is it really solely depending on where you are, where you're from, who you are, how you were raised, what your evaluation says, what your privilege is, whether or not this is racially, motivated initially?
Well,
because he asked if he pulled over a white man, would he immediately react the same way as if he pulled over a Black man?
Right. Well, I can tell you from experience, I know that the two most dangerous things that police can do are car stops and domestic violence calls. The reason the car stop is you're dangerous. One of the most dangerous things is that person in the car. First of all, you don't know who he or she is. They could have just murdered their family and driving down the street and had a taillight that's out, and you pulled them over for that. You don't know about what they did. They already have a plan. They already have a plan for you when you walk up to that car. All you're doing is walking up to the car. So you don't know. You're going over, hey, listen out, bang. And that's how fast it happens. Domestic violence, same thing. You go in the apartment. I've seen this happen. You go to a house, there's a woman beat up, black eye, busted lip. He's in there. He did that to me.
So wait. but
I've experienced that. You're right, Ron, with the domestic violence part. I've seen that where the guy attacked the police because he was called and it was challenging his authority in the household.
Well, my point was the put the cuffs on the guy who assaulted the woman, and the woman stabbed the cop. You can't take him away. No, I need him. I'm like, what?
Very true.
Well, you gotta be kidding me.
So when a person gets pulled over, all right, and we all know the standard, what we've been seeing on social media, as far as like the person who's been pulled over. And I'll say this, and again, this is just from the mind of, this is all from the voice of me. This is, how do you say it, Blair? Go ahead, say it. Give the disclaimer.
Well, that's it. These are the thoughts and opinions of PJ Wright and PJ Wright alone.
There are, like, as you said earlier, there are a lot of times where we don't have to immediately instigate create the energy that we're bringing towards the car. But if a cop pulls you over and you ask them, what am I being pulled over for? And they can't initially give you that initial response of, your taillight is out or this, that, whatever, or you made this turn, or that you were driving a little unsafe and wanted to make sure everything was okay. If that initial exchange of trust doesn't happen, because that's what I label that as. Okay, if that doesn't happen, then it sets the driver immediately on the defense, you have no reason to do what you're doing because you haven't said it. Are officers actually supposed to actually admit this ahead of time before, I got your license and registration, during questioning? When they ask you this, answer that question. And if not, if they aren't, why aren't they?
Well, like I said, it depends on the situation. I mean, they can, let's say it's hypothetical. You just drove past and they pull you over. Car is the same type of car used in a robbery that just happened. It's not that person, same color, same style car. They're not going to say anything. Hey, we think that you was, usually they'll get your information, your license, registration, and they'll just check it to see what they come up with. But now, if it's strictly like traffic, you made a U-turn, you shouldn't have, whatever, they should say something. They should tell you, well, you went through the light. I find that most of the times they tell you, but I mean, if you got to take it to the next level, I say remain calm, request a patrol supervisor. I need a patrol supervisor, and that's all.
How many patrol supervisors are there?
No, there's plenty. There's a lot. There's always patrol supervisor.
So and I know we all keep kind of going back to this particular example, but I think part of the reason for that is because, just like you said, car stops and domestic violence situations are probably the two biggest dangerous situations that police encounter and the most frequent. So, and this is piggybacking off of what PJ said, because it is a question I wanted to ask before too. Just what is, and I know in the real world we can't really do this, but for the sake of this conversation and trying to have as fair and autonomous a conversation as possible, let's take race out of it. Let's just take that out of this for now. In a car stop, when a police officer pulls over a civilian and goes up to the car, I think a lot of times there is this kind of struggle between the police officer in the position of authority and the person in the car who knows that they're expected to comply, but then also has this state or this feeling of enacting I know my rights kind of thing. So in that kind of scenario, what is supposed to happen? What are the things that are ideally supposed to happen? Because I think the thing is, we can point to so many different examples of when it goes left and when it goes wrong, and it's either, this person initiates it or that person initiates it. But in an ideal scenario, what is supposed to happen?
Well, you should comply. I mean, as far as with a car stop.
I mean, comply within reason, right? Because you
Well,
can't
oh,
just
yeah,
tell
I
me
mean,
what to do.
Does that mean comply with everything the officer is asking you to do?
No. I mean, like, okay, you gotta have. I mean, if he pulls you over and for whatever reason, red light, whatever, and he pulls you over, like he can issue a summons. But during that time, he starts talking to you and starts, let's say, smells alcohol, or someone was smoking weed in the car. Now things start going up from that reasonable suspicion. Now you're going to probable cause. You still, I mean, it's discretionary. You can just be like, have a good night. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want, but the thing is, what I find happens where so many cops get themselves into trouble, is ego. You say something, I say something. You say something, I say. It becomes a pissing contest, and you're going to lose. You're going to lose the pissing contest because what's going to happen, like PJ said, backup, and next thing you know, you're surrounded by 5 or 6 patrol cars, and you're just getting ready to spend the night or a couple of weeks somewhere. And it's people say, well, it didn't have to go that way. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. But see, that's the thing. It's like, you don't know. The climate of things so that you don't know. But it's always been that way. It's only thing that's different now is we have social media and instantaneous results. You see it right away. It's always been happening, I mean, I get way off the subject just a little bit. I mean, you take a place like North Korea, where they don't even allow them to have the internet. You can't even see what's going on there. And that there's some horrific stuff going on there.
Oh, yeah.
But they have no voice. They have no free thought. They have nothing. And so, but like I'm saying, it's instantaneous now. You see things, you got, what is the other one? The Citizen app. All of a sudden, of a knife fight 2 blocks away or 200 feet away. This house is burglary.
I had to take that off my phone because there was a lot of pain.
Yeah, because you'd be like, I just came from there.
Right. They murdered everyone in the store.
Well, and also just
Chris,
like
you do the same
what
thing.
you were saying is, just like you said, like this isn't anything new. We're just way more aware of it now than we ever have.
Absolutely.
But this has been the narrative for decades, for years now. And just moving into, I know something that we all wanted to discuss. I think what people think is, I think people are trying to figure out what the solution is. And I think everybody has different ideas of what that looks like. But one of the components of what people believe to be the situation is defunding the police. And I know a lot of people are unclear about what that actually means. I know a lot of people are unclear about like what that actually looks like and what that means. And there's a lot of reactions that happen when people say that. So again, because we do have you and you are in a unique perspective because you are a Black man and you are, a retired police officer, just what are your thoughts and, feelings surrounding the act of defunding the police?
Well, when they say defund, I mean, a lot of people, they'll kind of mesh the two together with defund with get rid of the police. And you definitely don't want to get rid of the police. You don't want that, because if you can only imagine a Wild West scenario in your neighborhood where just imagine if there was, and I'm not sticking up for the cops. It's not that. That's not that at all. I'm saying imagine no police in either of your neighborhoods, and people start acting up, and they start going kind of crazy and breaking down doors and coming into your house and doing what they feel. And who are you gonna pick up? You're gonna call. Who are you gonna call? the people from down the corner there, they ain't coming for you.
I'm trying to tell people, like, right now, like, and you know, just make a little light of this, but I'm dead serious. Like, y'all keep playing. This pandemic ain't no joke. This is the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, and next thing you know, somebody's gonna be Rick Grimes. But it's about to happen.
But do you agree when it comes to like defunding the police? Like, the argument that a lot of people are making is that, for instance, we'll use NYPD. NYPD's budget is $5.6 billion, right? And a lot of people say that's enormous because when you take that in comparison to a city, to another country's military force,
right,
it's way over the top. How do you feel about,
or even the school systems? How much the school systems get?
Well, we didn't even get into like trying to like defund it and the fact that
allocate that money elsewhere.
Well, people don't even.
Because that's what defunding means. It's just allocating.
Right, but people don't even know that. People say stuff like just defunding police. But what do you feel about that? Do you feel like $5.6 billion is adequate, or do you feel like?
Well, honestly, because I would have to actually see a breakdown, you know, to where that goes.
To where the money's going.
Yeah, because I mean, if I say, yeah, well, defund the police, I'll be like, well, yeah, do away with my pension. I don't care, get rid of it. You know, I'll sit here. I'll tell you, Mom. But yeah, I would think that we're moving. But I feel like I think defund the police basically, you know, would be like demilitarize the police. You know, that would be something. I mean, you could still be well equipped. I think a lot of the money that the police get, right, it goes to training. You have to pay the people who do the screening, who do the training, who do the psychological. The psychological is not something that just happens on paper. It has to be scored. It's what is it? MMPI, the CPI, the demographic. I know the test well, but you know, and it costs money.
So
I think what happened is when a lot of people saw when the protests and riot, because there were both protests and riots, we're just going to be honest, and saw how fast the police force came out with mask, squat, full squat, SWAT, get up, but everybody had masks, and yet we were hearing that our hospitals and nurses and doctors on the forefront of we're not getting enough masks because there was not enough money, but we saw the police have them like immediately. So I think that's also what led to a lot of people saying, you know, that they need to be defunded, whereas funds need to be reallocated to other places. Because it was like, well, why do they have masks and like full shield mask?
Well, to be honest, you get that when you go into the academy. That's part of your training. You get that. That's part of all of the stuff that you wind up having. You get that, you get your mask, you get all of these things.
So that's stuff that you have in your locker or to take home.
Yeah, well, you can take it home if you want to lug it home, but this is the stuff that you get. It's at the beginning when you get into the academy. These are the things you get. You wind up and especially after 9/11. Because prior to 9/11, you had your helmet and the other junk. You didn't have all that. But after 9/11, because so many people went down there and suffered serious health issues from breathing in all
and
that
stuff,
crap.
yeah.
Black lung.
So that became mandatory. So you had to carry more stuff with you. So these are things that you just had. You know, it wasn't. You know, I would say these aren't things that were suddenly just given to them. I know that this is given to you when you go into the academy, and you hate it because you got to carry that crap around with you every day in that big bag. So
okay. I'm actually glad you brought up the academy, because I used to work over on Wall Street, and one of the academies were right there by New York Presbyterian Hospital, which I think that's William Street. Right. And so they used to take the students. What do you call the cadets? The cadets. Recruits. Yeah.
Recruits.
Yeah. I'm thinking about Police Cop. What was that? Whatever movie that?
Police Academy.
Most hilarious movie ever, right? But they used to take them running, you know, around the area, and it just be looking at some of them and like, really, so you like, okay, so just anybody can be a police officer. Okay, great. Once they finish the academy, what is the actual process? Or like, do you think that there needs to be a deeper process for saying, okay, you're 22 years old, you did flying colors, you did great. Now here you are, you're a cop, you're now on the street. Like, should there be some type of time limit?
Well, they do. They have the years ago it was called NSU. It was Neighborhood Stabilization Unit. So basically, that's where the new cops went to learn the neighborhood, to become familiar with the people. And you were out there. I mean, and a lot of times it was you know, when you would see them, like if you were driving down the street and all of a sudden your road went from 2 lanes to 1 lane, and there was a bunch of cones and there was a bunch of cops standing out there, and you know, and they was just like, hey, good evening, blah blah blah. Those 9 times out of 10 other new cops, they're trying to get them used to interacting with people, you know, talking to people, you know, checking licenses, but that's how you interact with them. So they're talking with people, you know, or they would put them like near housing projects, you know, to, you know, and they give them a corner or a post, and then it would be like 2 blocks this way, 2 blocks that way, whatever it is. And you just interact with the people, you know, and that's how they did it. And I don't remember what it's called now. That they do have something that's similar to it. It's not community policing, but it is something. But they don't just take you out of the academy and put you out. They don't. They're not here. You know, when you finish the academy, you go to a command and you go through training. You have to go through more hands-on training, because, you know, this actually helps to weed out people who are going to flip out, who are going to be too aggressive. You know,
I think it's also different based on wherever you did your, like, you know, an officer from the rural areas of America, you know, transfers over to up here to the metropolitan area. They're not going to have the same experience. They're not going to have the same like interactions that they normally have had with people. I've noticed a lot of times when I see an officer walking up to a situation, his left or whichever hand his holster is on, that's the like it immediately is on there like, I'm the big boss, like which sometimes creates the energy of
right. It creates a negative percentage. It makes things worse. But you know, I've dealt with people, you know, working who were from Long Island, were like way out on Long Island, and they was like, and they were like, Ron, I never worked with a black guy before. I never worked with a black person before. I'm going, you need to get out more. And I says, it's all right. It's gonna be all right. and that's how it was. It was like I you know, and they were born and raised and lived out in Smithtown or was it Quad out there, and went to school there. And I'm sure there's black people there, but
not like
it's
they didn't
like
associate.
It's right, and that's how it was. And you get people that were just like, oh wow, this is quite different. I'm like, yeah, well, this is welcome to the real world. This is what it is.
Is there I don't know if well, I'm sure you know, I'm not too sure, but is there a separate budget for the NYPD police union? Is there, because that seems to be like a thing that the reason why this is coming up is because there was a conversation that I mentioned the same thing, that maybe demilitarization of police departments need to happen, but not necessarily just cutting the police force in half. So they kind of flipped the argument, and then they kind of said, well, maybe we need to just get rid of the police union, because the police union is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're not protecting the people the way that they should.
Well, to be honest, the police union is there for the police.
Right.
You know, that's what the union is there for. But as far as cutting half the force, you say? Is that what you were saying?
Well, the argument was that they wanted to just cut NYPD's budget.
But you said do away with the union. But see, now that's a slippery slope. You don't want to start unless you don't like unions. You know, unions are important. Once you do one, that's something you start rolling downhill. That's a you know, Reagan did that to the air traffic controllers years ago, fired them all. You know, then what?
He sure did. I remember that.
Yeah.
Are you asking this about the unions because the unions are what protect the police when police shoot and kill people and they're not indicted?
Well, yes, in a nutshell, because the how it
figures that
how it happened was that basically we're seeing all these issues when it comes to police officers and them not necessarily doing the right thing by the community standards. So there's people's thought is that the union is protecting them and giving them unnecessary power. For example, the 50A, which is the Immunity Act that I think they just kind of, I don't know if they did away with it completely, but you know, things like that where they're giving unnecessary protections to some people, quote unquote, air quotes, to police officers that are out there in the field.
But doesn't it have to do with the law that's set to protect
right.
police officers?
Well, I think that's the thing. I think in essence the main question is like what type of accountability do the police feel that they have to do the right thing? Like do they feel like if you know, like they do something that they know is, you know, kind of on the line or is outright wrong, do they feel that they'll be held accountable to those actions? And like, what is that process? Like, what is the accountability like?
What is the actual definition of a law?
And then can you actually speak on the law that actually does protect the police officers from
that's exactly what I meant.
I know that, you know, the majority of the commanders at the precincts are really good people. You know, that's just my opinion. They're good people, and they want good officers, men and women. That's what they want, and you know, you would like to hope that the other officers, if they saw something going down, that they're going to hold the other ones accountable, or at least feel comfortable coming forward, because you know, it's just like any other, you know, political thing where you say something and then there's retaliation, you know, and you know, it can make your 20 years miserable. You know, I've known officers that have done the right thing, and next thing you know, they wind up working someplace that they don't want to work because they did the right thing, and everyone else is like, oh, you're a rat, you're this. You know what? If I see you, if you're doing something wrong, I have no problem with doing what I got to do, because I can't work with it. I can't work with somebody that's a criminal or you know, doing crazy stuff.
So is that the thing that like police officers have to hold other police officers accountable, or is there, and then like essentially like you said, the police chiefs and captains who want good people, like is it them who's doing the accountability, or is there a different system in place?
Like where's the checks and balances?
Well, there's checks and balances because you have within the commands, you have an ICO, so you have your integrity control officer. All right, and that's usually the guy or woman who, you know, finds out through the grapevine that you did something. And I would say I've never in all the years met a ICO who was just like, okay, sweep it under the rug. They always set you on fire. They lit you up every single time. If you did something, you were gonna have a problem. If they couldn't handle it in house, the next thing you know, you was at internal affairs, and they handled it from there, and you can lose your job through there.
Are those the type of people that would essentially be, like, just thinking in the case of like George Floyd, like if it hadn't resulted in his death and there wasn't this, you know, national scope like on like this particular case, is that the kind of thing that would have made it to an ICO officer?
Oh, definitely. Now, as far as where it happened, I can't speak for them because I don't know. I would imagine that, I would hope that that they would take it up the chain and do the right thing. I'm going to say, I have a little bit of confidence still within for PD, and I know that if the ICO or the captain saw that, they got to look out for themselves, because if they bury that and then it comes out later on, it's them too that's going down. They're gonna be like, look, I gotta do what I gotta do. It's the right thing to do, and that's that. You took an oath to do the right thing, to serve and protect. And a lot of people are like, no, serve and protect, or you'll wind up in jail. And that's the way it goes. And it's a good thing now. I mean, like, it's long time coming that people are finally being held accountable, but it is happening.
Yeah, because that's been the issue for so many years. It's exactly just what you said. Like, you took an oath to protect and serve, and if you break that oath, then you're subject to penalty just like everybody else is. But I think the part that the community has been missing for so long is the second part of it. There hasn't been the type of accountability, for lack of a better word. We have not seen that type of accountability.
All right, so I wanted to switch gears really quick, and just actually, as we're using this word oath, I want to tie this in there. The great thing about having you on here, and I think we really wanted to have you on here more so, is because Chris has always had a different perspective in general. So because he comes from a household raised by a police officer, when as a father and as a police officer, seeing your children growing up, seeing your young Black son and your young Black daughter grow up, what have the conversations been like as far as right and wrong police officers at, as far as staying away from anything that's going to go left within your interaction with the police officer?
Yeah, the conversation.
Well, listen, I remember when he was away at school.
Oh, fun.
When he was at
in that white ass area.
Yeah, when he was up in Buffalo there, and we've had that talk before. I tell him, I says, and I said, Chris, hands on the wheel, the whole bit. Everyone knows that talk. And then when he called me up, it was really late at night, and he told me that the cops had him out on the ground, sprawled out in the pouring rain for absolutely nothing, and then drove off. It's, there's no words. There's just no words, because it could have gone a lot worse, and it's sad to say, well, I don't want to make fun of it, but I'm saying, well, thank God you only laid on the ground and got wet. But thank God you was only on the ground and got wet. But, there's, my thing is, I tell him, I says, be respectful. I am not by any means saying be subservient, not at all. Be respectful, know your position. And I always say, don't be confrontational, but don't be afraid to ask for a supervisor. That's the thing, is if you need it, call for it. And so many people, they get into this thing where it's like, and I'm not saying for my son per se, but I'm saying people, you're getting pulled out of the car and you're getting the handcuffs put on you, and now they want to fight. It's probably going to end poorly.
It's a tough situation, and it's hard, and then I think as this generation changes, and I wanted to ask you one more question myself, and I didn't know, but I want to go back to that moment where you said when you were 15, as far as in reference to what made you become a cop. For the generation now, because it seems like finally, the generation now is a little bit more woke, and they're getting things out there, and they're verbally being fuck this shit is stupid, they're speaking up, and right. For those who want to become a cop now or going in the future, what advice would you give them?
I would still say go for it. I'd say go forward. I said, you know, I'd say be active with the job. You know, a lot of people with so many jobs, they just want a job, they want a paycheck, they want a pension, they want to go home. That's that. Be active. Be active in your community and be active in any community. You know, talk to people. You know, get involved with it. You know, and for God's sake, if you're gonna be in the job, take the promotion exams. The higher up you go, the more power you have. Get involved, you know, become a boss, become a sergeant, lieutenant, or captain, whatever you're going to be, you know, but don't forget where you came from. And that's a lot of times you get people that they put on that badge and the gun and they just forget.
They're black, not blue. They're black, not blue.
Yeah.
And
which is also
Chris knows, you know, who I'm talking about in particular, who, you know, used to wear it and put it on and thinks that it's all about them and you know, and my these people are going to take care of me, and it didn't work out that way for them, and they got themselves in a lot of trouble. I says, yeah, because you know why? This is still you. And I said, you think these are your boys?
My skin, my logo.
Ooh, that sounds like some tea. You want to spill? No, go ahead.
Unfortunate, but like I feel like a lot of people, both police officers and community, really lead and start off everything by emotions, and it's hard to, not saying that it's easy and it's just, you know, a simple thing that you can just get over, but it's real easy for you, like when I got pulled over, for me to sit there and be pulled over, know that I got pulled over for no apparent reason, and then still remain calm. And I think that's, you know, years ago, Ron, father, eternal youth.
Just say father.
Just say daddy.
Papa.
Dad. I think that was one of the things that we had actually spoke about, how upset and how angry I was, because why did I deserve to be targeted when all I do, and anybody knows me, I just go from point A to point B. I don't even want to go out like that. I'm not even, and PJ, you can attest to this.
Yeah, so, I'm not proud of you for this. Go ahead.
I've always been like that. I just want to go from point A to point B and let me go to sleep. And
go ahead.
Well, I tell you, you know, you say you couldn't understand that, but I mean, like, you know, what I was saying in the very beginning about this age, working undercover, you know, and looking for these guys that were doing robberies, and my partner is white. He's across the street. I'm on the other side. We're walking parallel.
Was he white or Puerto Rican? You sure you didn't have his face?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's white. He's white. My partner was white.
That is solely expressed by PJ.
I am still trying to get this whole New York Undercover kind of like motif going on in my head. Go ahead.
Well, I tell you, no, we're walking. We're walking. We're looking for this guy because he's been doing robberies. Walking. And now we're not talking to each other, obviously. We're playing it off like we're just, you know, the average Joe. And we're walking down the street, and comes around the corner. This police car comes speeding around the corner, and the guy jumps out the car, and he goes, "What the fuck are you doing in our neighborhood?" And he grabs me, slams me through the bushes. He jumps on top of me, and he feels my gun. And he screams to his partner, "He's got a gun!" And my partner's running over, and he's going, "He's a cop. He's with me." Blah, 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 blah. I says, "What's his?" I'm like, my head is spinning. I'm like, wait a minute. Because I'm black in this neighborhood, this is how you treat people? "Oh, we're looking for people for robberies." I said, "Yeah, we are too. That's what our job is. That's our job. That's our job." You know,
so in that situation, do you know if anything ever happened with those officers with the integrity division?
Well, you know, what happened was we had to go back to the command and, you know, you're supposed to make a report, but of course they don't want to do something cop on cop. They don't want to do that because it looks real bad. So I'm like, I said, no. I says, you know what? Make him come to roll call. Make him come to roll call and apologize in front of everyone for assaulting me. You know, tell him, oh, I mistook one of your guys for, you know, it's happened twice. I got hit with a nightstick. You know, I got hit with the same thing. I was like,
what are you doing here, stupid?
Yeah.
See,
yeah.
And with that, I totally like understand exactly like what you're saying. And I know that it was probably like, you know, frowned upon because you don't want, you know, cop on cop and everything that implies and whatnot. But to me, hearing that, I feel like that just perpetuates the issue still of like cops thinking they can get away with stuff and not be held fully accountable for their actions.
Right. But when you tried to push the issue, it went nowhere. You know, because now you got this commander in charge of the precinct against this commander. Exactly. Now they don't want that. It's just like
exactly. And again, like I'm just coming from the perspective of that's the frustration. Like that's the frustration in, you know, you try to do what's protocol or what's supposed to happen and nothing happens. Right. You try to do it another way, nothing happens. It's just, you feel that frustration of like trying to get justice and justice don't come.
Justice wasn't created for you.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna jump into dessert really quick, but I have one more question for you, and I just curious of your answer. As long as you know you were in the service, your service. We thank you for being a New York police officer. Thank you for
because at the end of the day, you have been putting your life on the line, and that's
absolutely
to scoff at all.
And so this is the part that I wanted to ask this question for, is because if you have done what you have done, regardless of what role you may have played in the service, can you think of a moment when you came home and said to your wife, you know, I'm really glad I became a cop because of this situation? Or like, can you think of something that really made you proud to be a New York City police officer?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a few things. Usually it was usually the good things. You wind up, something had a happy ending, a good ending, like, you know, delivering a baby. That was a good thing, you know.
Delivered a baby?
I delivered a baby. I delivered him too.
Hey.
Real
black men.
I got here.
I delivered him and my daughter. I delivered both of them.
That's right.
I didn't do much work, to be honest. You know, I was the catcher.
You caught the baby. That's important.
Hey, moral support is enough.
But you sure you didn't drop Chris? You sure you didn't drop him once or twice?
Yeah, he was slippery. He was slippery.
I was already sweaty. You know,
right. Yeah. Delivering a baby. You know, I mean, you say it's the little things. You know, doing CPR on someone, getting them back. You know, they're and you get them back. You know, catching someone. You know, I think my very first arrest was for attempted murder.
Wow.
You know, there was a guy stabbed his wife through the back, and the knife was sticking out of her chest. But wait, here's the bad part. He gets locked up. You know, he had to do the thing, go through the thing. She's in the hospital, critical condition. Months go by for the case to come up because she didn't die. Got to court, and this was how it was like. The two of them.
See, no.
Like, he stuck a knife. You know, he tried to let the air out of you.
And so, guys,
literally.
Since this is all audio, he literally had a pillow next to him and hugging upon the pillow, because this is, you know, that's why you don't jump
together.
Don't jump in other people's relationships. As the police officer should be.
I could not believe it.
But, again, in that situation, you know, there's 1,000,001 different reasons and all that. But yeah, that's trippy to see. Like,
I kind of want to say just to make this public statement for our listeners, especially as a person who has experienced domestic violence, that this is no way that we are trying to speak down or negative against someone that sticks with their abuser.
No.
However, it is to say that save yourself while you can.
Please.
Don't stay in a situation like that, because it's very detrimental to you. And if they do it once, they will definitely do it 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times.
I just couldn't. My brain couldn't wrap around it, and I just,
absolutely,
I didn't push the issue. I didn't push the issue because it's not my place. Happen. But it was, I hope that it's all good for them.
Well, the thing is, thank God you were there to help make sure that she didn't actually die.
Yeah, she would have. Yeah,
exactly.
She was definitely going out of the picture, unfortunately. But she made it. But I mean, little things. I mean, like I said, changing a tire for some old lady that stuck her car, broke down on the Grand Central Parkway in the rain. And baby. I'm out there getting splashed with nasty, muddy water.
New York water at that.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Corona water.
Okay.
Oh, no. No.
But yeah, I mean, the little things, and then sometimes you little things. You meet celebrities by accident. You just.
Who's the most famous person you met?
Well, let's see. What's his name? Kevin Costner. Let's see. Okay, yeah,
Bodyguard.
Exactly. Kevin Costner. James Brown.
Okay.
James Brown.
Yes, now that's the most famous person now.
I hope you.
I'm black and I'm proud.
I hope you met him because you just met him and not.
No. It's
out of the many times he got arrested, right?
No, it was just one of them things. He was just happened to be where I was at. And
let me tell you,
he's a funny guy.
I bet he is.
He was a funny guy.
Bet he is.
Loud.
Yes.
Loud.
Say it loud.
Say it loud.
How's it going, brother? Hey. I was like, okay.
Oh, okay. So we doing this,
good,
huh?
Sir.
Get on the good foot.
I'm good, sir. I'm good.
Oh, that's great. That's so great. And we're all just really appreciative that you have been so open and been so candid with us, because you do have such a unique perspective that I think it's important for people to hear, because these are very troublesome times that we're in and that we've been in, and this isn't new, but we're experiencing it in a new and very personal way, because as we said, like, we have access to everything through technology. So as much as we all have our own opinions and our listeners have their own opinions and thoughts, I think it's just so important to just get every perspective out there so people can be fully educated on the facts. And so with that,
I would say one more thing, and it's kind of related, unrelated. And if you think your voice doesn't count, make sure you vote this year. Don't be crazy.
That's right.
Vote.
Everyone's clapping.
You better vote.
Yes.
It's 4 more years will be 4 worse years.
And our listeners know that we are no strangers to pushing for people to vote. We talk.
Right.
I think it's a steady. We need to just call ourselves highly melanated and vote. Like,
basically, that's right. Get yourself registered and register a friend.
It's gonna be our tagline.
That's right.
But so to kind of bring this conversation to a close, we had a very full meal, and of course we can't leave the table.
Too much ham.
I'm taking some away home.
I love it.
Okay, everybody got a little to-go container, just like at the
Not
cookout.
me, I don't
you
eat
have your food
pork.
that you eat there, and your container that you take home. But to wrap things up, just share with us what your go-to dessert is, and then just kind of what your final thoughts are. Just, what do you want to say to our listening audience?
Wait. Can I?
Sorry. Pause.
Wait, no. This is I know his favorite food. I do really.
No, you.
Yes, it's a.
Don't say cilantro. Do not say so.
So is that a food or a garnish?
No, I don't. No, I hate cilantro. No, it tastes like soap.
What?
Cilantro is amazing.
Cilantro tastes like
cilantro
soap.
is like a boop.
Sir, when have you been eating soap?
Listen.
Hey, if you got a old life, granny, you put that shit right in your mouth.
Cilantro.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard that.
Oh, cilantro favorite
I don't
soap.
know if you Google it, if you Google cilantro tastes like, and watch what comes up. All right.
But I got some cilantro in the garden. It don't taste like soap.
I was gonna say I don't think I've eaten enough cilantro to feel like it has a palatable taste.
He's Googling it right now. Google cilantro cilantro ruins the flavor of everything.
No, that's grapefruit.
Grapefruit?
No, we don't. No, you got to eat grapefruit by itself. Huh?
It is the first thing that comes up, but yeah.
Wait.
It is.
Wait.
You just put cilantro and then tea.
Wait, the soap that my grandma used to push in my mouth ain't taste like cilantro. So I don't know what y'all talk about.
I don't know. I've never thought I like cilantro.
No, you know what it is? Cilantro is in the same chemical category. So with some people, depending on
what toxic waste.
Yeah, of OR6A2. Yeah.
Oh,
so that which is the chemical code.
No cilantro for you.
We're off topic. Yeah.
Just
and
like
I'll
what
never
about
be
Taco
able to look at
Tuesday?
it the same again.
I'm going to tear cilantro up.
I'm about to question every time I see cilantro on my plate. I will think about this day.
I will tell, but like, well, here goes some soap.
Be like, well,
yeah, right.
This week
you can like think of Irish Spring. Be like,
Oh God!
Wow.
I'm glad you said that because now I get it. Oh God, I'll never forget that. Oh no. Oh no. Dessert,
so then your
please.
dessert, sir.
You mean an actual dessert?
Well, Blair has to introduce.
She did.
I did.
Oh, okay.
If I can have an actual real dessert right now. I would love some. I would love some vanilla ice cream with some Hershey's chocolate syrup. That simple and basic.
That slaps.
Just as long as you knew that's what it was.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't need. Hey, listen. It's like, honey.
I'm playing. I love. Is he?
Final thought. You didn't tell me.
No, they'll be like, "Where's the chocolate syrup?" Oh, it's on the nightstand.
I knew this was coming. The father is of iota men.
Well. And your final thought, sir?
Is that the final thought? Chocolate on a nightstand.
Oh wow, we can't go out like that.
Chocolate.
Happy life, happy wife. Chocolate on a nightstand.
Chocolate.
There you go. Well, I don't know what else is there.
No, your final thought.
You're fine.
I told y'all.
Final thoughts. I was just thinking about it. My mind just drifted off. Oh, chocolate. Final thoughts. I would say, you know what? It sounds so cliche, treat people with respect, be nice, but it's true. That's the bottom line. It's like, and that goes for everyone. I don't look at cops or even for white people. I don't look at them and go, I don't hate. I don't. But the thing is I wish that other people would open their minds, And when I say walk in my shoes or walk in our shoes, I says, and then you'll get it. But I says, but if you haven't done it, you don't understand. People they don't understand it. That's my final thought. It takes work. It's work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much, retired officer Poppa Ron, for coming on the episode with us. We greatly appreciate you, and thank you again for having something to do with Red being alive and being his nugget self here. Grateful for him. We love him so much. So
He's lost.
Yeah.
No, we really do appreciate you, and we really do appreciate your son today. So thank you so much, guys.
And every day.
And
therefore. You guys have been great. It was great talking with all of you. It was a lot of fun.
Good. Thank you.
Hey.
I said, maybe here, I'll throw this out there. When all of this pandemic and everything clears up, we should all go out and go out and eat.
I'm there.
My treat. I want to take everybody out.
If it's for free,
I'm taking it. Yeah. Well, I'll even let you can pick the place. You can pick wherever you want to go. Just let me know.
Capitol Grill.
Red, you pick the place. Red, you pick the place, please. Red. Thank you.
Look at God.
Because you'll know what your father's going to want to order. You know what he likes. So you pick the place.
The place that doesn't serve cilantro.
No, it has to be as a garnish.
Well, I like seafood, but if
Me
it's
too.
cilantro, I will no.
Run for the hills.
But seafood or whatever.
I like seafood too, so hey.
Whatever you guys come up with, when we're good to go.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so sweet.
Right.
It would be an undisclosed location, so listeners, you will not know.
Right. That when he says take you all, he means the highly melanated podcast crew.
And we will not be going to the place that PJ just meant because y'all not gonna follow us.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
you won't know when we're there.
That place is really good, but it's not black
Capitol
owned.
Grill isn't
But any black owned place, yeah. So anyway, thank you guys for taking the time to listen to another episode of Highly Melanated. I hope you got some great nuggets. I hope you were fed. I hope you are full, and I hope you are ready to give this takeaway and share this episode. Share, comment, click, like, subscribe, do all the wonderful things that you guys have been doing since day one. You are the MVPs. We greatly appreciate every last one of you. As always, you can follow us on all forms of social media. That is Instagram, Highly Melanated Podcast. On Twitter, you can follow us as H_Melanated Pod. That's MELANATEDPOD. Actually, H_ and then what I just spelled. And you can go to our website at www.highlymelanatedpodcast.com. And yeah, am I leaving anything out? No. So on that note, love, peace, and
seafood grease.
Yes.
Get on the good foot.
Hey!